Hello, my name is Matthew, and I've been reading Dune, and I'm about two-thirds of the way through the book now. I've been reading it on my e-reader, and I'm at 65%. And I mentioned it in my first video that the beginning of Dune was a little difficult for me, and I was slow to get my bearings. There was a lot of world building and setup in order to allow the story to begin. And as soon as everything clicked for me, I just found it gripping and great fun. And I'm still thoroughly entertained and engaged in this world that Frank Herbert has created. Um, Primarily, everything is taking place on this desert planet that has a lot of amazing characteristics. There are just vast oceans of desert. Water is scarce and rare and a form of currency. There's a strange spice that they're mining for its unusual properties, and it's incredibly rare and difficult to get to. It's in the desert, and the desert is inhabited by these gigantic worms, and the slightest movement provokes these sandworms. So it's incredibly dangerous to even be out in the desert at all. And at the beginning of the book, we find out that there's been a new there's been a power shift in this planet, and now there's a new royal family that is in charge of things. And that's the Duke Leto, his mistress Jessica, and their son. What's the son's name? Paul. Um, and there was a lot of excitement and adventure in the first part, and the second third has not disappointed. Straight away, there was a traitor, and mutinous things happened. The original regime, or another regime, has burrowed its way on the inside and has captured the Duke, and also captured Jessica and her son Paul. And we find out that the Duke has been executed. He was killed, and Jessica and Paul are on this some kind of hovercraft, or it's like a mix between a hovercraft and a helicopter, and they're off in the desert to get killed too. But they, through daring do, are able to outwit and outmuscle their captors, and they escape. We find out that the new regime is run by this man. He's the Baron, and one of the great things about how this overthrow happened is that it wasn't a perfect, seamless mastermind plan that went off flawlessly, but it also wasn't just incompetent. It was a mixture between the two. They did some things well, there were some things that they missed, and there's loose ends that needed to be accounted for. And we also find out that the Baron isn't the ruler. There's people on top of him. There's the Emperor, which we start getting glimpses of as the book goes along. So there's also a power struggle and fracturing happening just within this other regime that's trying to take over the planet and its resources. And then we get this really great, exciting, adventurous episode with Paul and his mom, Lady Jessica, when they're out in the desert, and they find out that Paul's father was murdered. So his father has died, and through the eyes of Jessica, we get to see Paul, who's a 15-year-old boy, immediately through trauma and extraordinary circumstances, have to mature and become an adult and show all of his training and become a leader right before his mother's eyes in a moment that requires it. This is one of those moments of a lifetime. And we get to see that Paul lives up to these expectations. He is able to, through all of this training, because he has superpowers too or something. He's able to outmaneuver and outwit and just generally get the better of his captors and the people that are after him. There's this amazing flight chase sequence where, against all odds, he flies into a sandstorm, which is supposed to be certain death. So the people, the other regime that was flying after him, after the ship, decide, well, clearly they've died. They went into the sandstorm, and nothing survives the sandstorm. And meanwhile, Paul, who's the pilot in this hovercraft thing, he's able to do all of these amazing acrobatic maneuvers that they're able to escape death and barely skirt out of it, and they crash land. But now they have basically nothing. They have their suits and a few supplies, and they have to figure out how to survive in these immediate circumstances, but also very quickly come up with plans to get back to where they need to be, and I guess for them, set everything right. And so they have to worry about the desert, they have to worry about dehydration, they have to worry about the sandworms, all of these, the enemies still, all of these factors involved, and they have to just perfectly balance all of these things in order to make it at minute by minute through the day. There's a sand avalanche, and his mother nearly dies, but he's able to save her, but they lose their supplies, and then they get their supplies back. But finally, they end up getting, the two of them, Paul and their mother, and his mother, they get ambushed by these native people. So there's people that live out in the desert, and they have been able to adapt to this extreme environment in the same way that the few animals that we encounter have also had to evolve to survive in this extreme arid desert environment. They have their own culture and their ways of doing things that make sense to them and keep them alive. And they get ambushed, but Lady Jessica is able to get the best of them, and then very quickly they get the respect of these native people, and they're kind of working along together. Paul gets stuck in this battle to the death with this other guy, and that's a whole thing. It's just great. And you go back to like the Baron and the regime over there. All of a sudden there's a gladiator style, another battle to the death with the Baron and a slave, and it's a whole thing. But there's a lot going on in this book, and it's been great fun, even on an e-reader. For want of a phrase, it is a page turner. And there's some things that I've been impressed with. With all of this world building, Frank Herbert was able to situate himself in a way that he can describe this world within the world. And I'll try to explain what I mean by that. It's an alien planet completely described by terms that would be used on the alien planet. So there's no descriptions that would be references to Earth at all. Instead, through all of that work in the beginning and continued development up until this point, this desert world it's entirely self-contained. And the other thing which is connected to that is the history and culture of this world is also self-contained. So there's literature that's important. Poetry is recited and told, and there's oral traditions and music, and it's believable the way that all of this has been given to me as the reader, and purposefully structured throughout the book. It's believable that they have their own arts and culture. Um, so they're able to reference literary um, works that are important to them. And it's done in a way that, as a reader, it's still meaningful to me, even though those works are alien. So I've been really impressed with that balance between um, the world building and the exciting, straightforward adventure, and the constant feeling of suspense, and an amazing um, acceleration of story. It's just charging along, and um, aside from wanting to know what happens, I'm constantly feeling rewarded. So those are my those are my thoughts at the moment. I'm really enjoying it. It's been a really fun read, and there's so much, as you can tell, there's so many things happening in this. It seemed better to have it broken up into a few videos. I imagine I'll finish it into a third video, and we'll be done with this book. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you've read it. Leave a comment if you would like, and thank you for watching.